everybody.
So, guten Abend allerseits.
Let's begin with prayer.
Lasst uns mit ein Gebet an. Lieber himmlischer Vater, Herr, wir kommen vor dir und danken dir für diesen Tag und auch, dass wir hier jetzt zusammenkommen können. Und ich bete um deine Gegenwart, während wir dein Wort studieren. Und ich bete, dass du Bruder Lorenz mit seinen Gedanken, die er hat, hilfst. Und bitte segne auch die Übersetzung und das Livestream-Werk. Und ich bitte um deine Segnungen in Jesu Namen. Amen.
Okay, so this evening we want to build a little bit on the thoughts of this morning worship.
So, heute Abend wollen wir etwa darauf aufbauen, auf die Gedanken, die wir heute Morgen angeschaut haben.
This morning we looked at the book of Joel.
Und heute Morgen haben wir das Buch Joel angeschaut.
So let's go back there.
So, lasst uns da wieder hin.
Joel chapter 1.
Joel Kapitel 1.
And let's read verses 1 to 5.
Und lasst uns die Versen 1 bis 5 lesen.
It says, "The word of the Lord that came to Joel, the son of Pethuel. Hear this, ye old men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? Tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children and their children another generation. That which the palmer worm hath left hath the locust eaten, and that which the locust hath left hath the cankerworm eaten, and that which the cankerworm hath left hath the caterpillar eaten. Awake, ye drunkards, and weep and howl, all ye drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it is cut off from your mouth." Okay, so what did we see? What is this illustrating here?
So, was haben wir gesehen? Was stellt dies dar?
Yes, last morning
Das ist
message,
die
right?
letzte Warnungsbotschaft.
Okay, to whom?
Zu wem?
Yes.
So, jemand, der abgefallen ist.
So we saw basically that Joel, because who's Joel?
So, wer ist Joel?
God's people with
Yes, he's a teacher, he's a
Melchizedek.
prophet, right?
So, er ist ein Lehrer, der ist ein Prophet, der ist Melchizedek.
And when can we see the first teachers?
Und wann können wir die ersten Lehrer sehen?
The sign when it says when the towers, when God begins to punish the nations.
So,
Okay.
wenn Gott anfängt, die Nationen zu richten.
Angel of Revelation.
So let's go to Daniel. Just keep your finger here. Let's go to Daniel chapter 12.
So, haltet den Platz hier und geht zu Daniel Kapitel 12. Gesundheit.
And verses 2 and 3.
Und die Verse 2 und 3.
"And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." So what is it here in verse 2 speaking about?
Vers 2. Worüber spricht das?
Special resurrection, right?
Besondere Auferstehung.
And when does it take place?
Und wann findet das statt?
Beginning of the 7th plague,
Am
right?
Anfang der 7. Plage.
So right here,
Gerade
right?
hier.
At the end of the final test,
Am
right?
Ende des finalen Tests.
So, and then verse 3,
Vers 3.
"And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever." So, the righteous that get resurrected here, what are they?
So, die Gerechten, die gerade hier am Anfang der 7. Plage auferweckt werden, was sind sie?
They are the fulfillment of Abraham's promise, the stars
Die sind die Erfüllung von die Verheißung an Abraham, die Sterne eben.
Yes, because his seed was to be as the stars of the heaven, right?
Weil der Samen Abrahams sollte wie die Sterne des Himmels werden.
But it also says they are wise.
Aber es sagt auch, dass die weise sind.
And when you have a margin,
25 and verse 6.
Und wenn du in den Nebenbemerkungen in den Studium Bibel gehst,
then it says here wise can also be translated as teacher.
es sagt, dass die Weise hier kann auch übersetzt werden als Lehrer.
So basically, they are the first teachers, right?
Die sind die erste Lehrer
And they are those of the special resurrection.
und das sind auch diejenigen von dieser besonderen Auferstehung.
And they now give the
Final warning.
final warning message, right?
Sie sind es, die das finale Warnungsbotschaft denn geben.
So it's this last warning.
Letzte Warnung.
In the last days, we looked at different illustrations of this last warning illustrated in this time, right?
Und über die letzten Tage haben wir verschiedene Darstellungen von dieser letzten Warnung in dieser Zeit angeschaut.
So just give me an easy example of people still having probation in this time here.
So, gib mir ein einfaches Beispiel, wo Menschen in dieser Zeit noch Gnade haben,
That were agents of Satan in this time,
die in dieser Zeit Agenten des Satans
or
waren
that apostasized from
oder das abgefallen sind
God's truth.
von Gottes Wahrheit.
Job, for instance, right?
Also Hiob zum Beispiel.
Okay, let's go there. Let's
Lass
go
uns
to
dahin.
Job 42.
Lass uns zu Hiob 42 gehen.
Basically ask what, these different illustrations that show people being agents of Satan here, but they still have probation.
Also ich habe danach gebetet, dass wir Darstellungen suchen von Menschen in dieser Zeit, die Agenten von Satan sind, aber hier drin noch eine Möglichkeit haben, Buße zu tun.
Okay, so in Job, who accused Job in this time here?
So in dieser Zeit, wer hat Hiob angeklagt?
3 friends.
3 friends, right?
Seine 3 Freunde.
Okay. And but Job gets delivered by the voice of God, right?
Aber Hiob, der wird von die Stimme des Herrn befreit.
Which is the 7th plague, right?
Und das markiert die 7. Plage.
Okay, so Job is now here.
So Hiob ist jetzt hier.
And what is commanded him to do?
Und was ist ihm befohlen, dass er tun soll? Pray for the 3
Yes,
friends.
he should now intercede for his friends, right?
Er sollte jetzt Fürbitte für seine 3 Freunde
So
machen.
let's read verse 7 and 8.
So lass uns die Verse 7 und 8 in Hiob
Or maybe
42
let's begin in verse 5 just that everybody has clarity. Right?
Oder sogar, wir fangen im Vers 5 an, um Klarheit zu verschaffen.
So verse 5 and 6.
Die Verse 5 und 6.
I've heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. So what is this experience?
So, was ist diese Erfahrung von Hiob?
Behold, face to
Revelation.
face.
Yes, right?
Das ist, wo er
It's here this humbling in the dust experience,
das ist
right?
diese in den Staub gedemütigt werden Erfahrung hier.
Like Isaiah and like all the other prophets, right?
Genauso wie Jesaja und alle anderen von den Propheten.
Okay, and then they are sent.
Und danach werden sie gesandt.
Okay. And then verse 7 and 8.
Die Verse 7 und 8 jetzt.
And it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, My wrath is kindled against thee and against thy 2 friends. For ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering. And my servant Job shall pray for you, for him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, in that ye have not spoken of me the thing which is right, like my servant Job. So, in verse 9.
Vers 9 auch.
So Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite and Zophar the Nemathite went and did according as the Lord commanded. Then the Lord also accepted Job. So we can see here, Job now intercedes for these 3 friends.
Hier können wir sehen, dass Hiob tut Fürbittedienst für diese 3 Freunde.
But For whom is he not interceding?
Aber für wem tut er keinen Fürbittedienst?
Elihu.
Für
Right?
Elihu.
Okay, so Elihu, his probation is closed.
So Elihu, seine Gnadentour ist zu.
Okay, so you can see here 3 friends of Job.
So die 3 Freunde Hiobs,
They have still an opportunity.
sie haben noch eine Möglichkeit.
Okay, now give me a different illustration.
Gib mir eine weitere Darstellung.
Poor of the flock in Zechariah chapter 11.
Okay,
So,
yes.
die Armen der Herde in Zachariah Kapitel 11
Okay.
And every other illustration is the poor of the flock.
und jede andere Darstellung der Armen der Herde.
So then let's go to Zechariah 11. Sure.
Lasst uns zu Zachariah 11 gehen.
Okay, so yeah, we understand in verse 3 these false shepherds, they get passed by.
So in Vers 3, wir verstehen, dass diese falschen Hirten, an denen ist es vorbei, der Herr geht an sie vorüber.
And then verse 4, thus saith the Lord my God, feed the flock of the slaughter.
Dann in Vers 4.
And then jump down to verse 11.
Und dann kommt bis Vers 11 hinunter.
And it was broken in that day, so the poor of the flock that waited upon me knew that it was the word of the Lord. And I said unto them, if ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they wait for my price 30 pieces of silver. So they still can buy Christ, right?
So, sie können Christus immer noch kaufen.
Okay. So in these 30 pieces of silver, we understand is the price of a slave.
Price of a?
Slave.
Ah, okay. Und wir wissen, dass diese 30 Silberlinge sind der Preis einer Sklaven.
Yes. Was basically the lowest price you need to pay.
Das
Okay.
ist das niedrigste Preis, die du bezahlen musstest für eine Sklave.
Yes. So the Lord basically shows us we don't really have to give much.
In comparison.
Yes, in comparison. Okay.
So, der Herr zeigt uns, dass wir nicht besonders viel geben muss im Vergleich zu das Wert.
I mean, we have to give all, right?
Also wir müssen zwar alles geben,
But in comparison, it's very little.
aber unsere alles im Vergleich zu was wir bekommen ist zwar sehr wenig.
Okay. Now let's go to Exodus chapter 32.
So, lasst uns jetzt 2. Buch Mose 32 aufschlagen. 2. Mose 32.
And let's begin in verse 1.
Und wir fangen in Vers 1 an.
It says, and when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. So this now illustrates this making of the golden calf, right?
Das stellt dieses Bilden des goldenen Tiers.
And what does it illustrate?
Und was stellt das dar? Okay.
Yes, this omega apostasy, right?
Das Omega-Abfall.
So, and what did they not do any longer?
Und was haben sie nicht getan? Didn't wait.
Yeah, they didn't tarry, right?
So, sie haben nichts mehr verzögert oder gewartet.
Okay, so they erect here the golden calf.
Also sie stellen diesen goldenen Stier auf.
And they make this false feast.
Sie machen diesen falschen Fest.
Like which other false feast?
Wie welche weitere falsche Fest?
Yeah, Vashtis, right?
Die von Vasti.
Okay. And now Moses comes down at the end of their feast.
Und am Ende von ihrem Fest kommt Moses herab.
And let's jump down to verse 26.
So lesen wir Vers 26 jetzt.
Or actually, let's read verse 19 to 20
Oder
first.
sogar zuerst die Verse 19 und 20.
And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount. And he took the calf which they had made, and burned it in the fire, and ground it to powder, and strawed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink it. So, what does this illustrate?
So was stellt dies dar?
Drinking cup of the
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So, sie
Okay.
mussten das Kelch des dritten Engels trinken.
So they drink now this wrath,
So, sie trinken diesen Zorn.
but when we jump down to verse 26,
Aber jetzt Vers 26.
then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. Okay, so what did Moses say?
So, was sagt Mose?
Yes, who's on the Lord's side? Right?
Wer ist auf dem Herrn Seite?
So this is basically this last warning.
So,
Okay.
dies ist diese letzte Warnung.
And in this story, to whom is it given?
Und in dieser Geschichte, zu wem geht diese Botschaft?
Levites. What given?
Who's on the Lord's side?
So, wer ist auf dem Herrn Seite? Diese Botschaft, zu wem ist das gegeben?
Well, the response,
Everybody.
All
the
those
response
who
by
lost.
the Levites and by the
Yeah, everybody that had not partaken there. Apostasy.
Basically, everybody had a chance, right, to
So,
repent.
jeder hat eine Gelegenheit, Buße zu tun.
So it was the last call to those that partook in this Omega apostasy, and also the Levites that didn't partake, right?
So, es war der letzte Aufruf zu all diejenigen, die an diesem Omega-Abfall Anteil genommen haben, aber auch für die Leviten, die daran nicht Anteil nahmen.
Okay. So, and what other story does Sister White link to this call, who's on the Lord's side?
Und welche andere Geschichte verbindet Ellen White zu dieses Aufruf, wer ist auf dem Herrn Seite?
Elijah und Carmel.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Also Elia,
And Ezra 8, yes, that's the story I had in mind.
Elia auf Karmel und Ezra,
Ezra 8.
also und Ezra Kapitel 8.
Okay, let's go to Ezra chapter 8.
So, lasst uns zu Ezra Kapitel 8 gehen.
And let's begin in verse 1.
Und wir fangen in Vers 1 an.
Oh, no, sorry, not in verse 1. No, actually, you can read verse 1 and then also verse 15 to 16.
Also wir lesen Vers 1 und dann die Versen 15 und 16.
It says, These are now the chief of their fathers, and this is the genealogy of them that went up with me from Babylon in the reign of Artaxerxes the king. So it's now speaking about when they left Babylon.
So spricht darüber, über die Zeit, wo sie Babylon verließen.
Verse 15.
Vers 15.
And I gathered them together to the river that runneth to Ahava, and there abode we in tents 3 days, and I viewed the people and the priests, and found there none of the sons of Levi. Then sent I for Eleazar, for Ariel, for Shemaiah, and for Elnathan, and for all these people, also for Joarib, and for Elnathan, man of understanding. And verse 17.
Vers 17.
And I sent them with commandment unto Iddo, the chief, at the place Caspi fire, and I told them what they should say unto Iddo, and to his brethren the Nethinims at the place of Cassi fire, that they should bring unto us ministers for the house of our God. Okay, so what happened here?
So, was geschah hier?
They wanted to leave Babylon,
Sie
right?
wollten Babylon verlassen,
But what was the problem?
aber woran lag das Problem?
Yeah, there were no Levites, right?
Es waren keine Leviten dabei.
So Now let's read what this White has to write about it.
So, wir lesen, was Ellen White darüber zu sagen hat jetzt.
So there were no Levites and therefore he sent now these 11 people.
So, es gab keine Leviten und deswegen sent those what?
11 people.
Diese 11 Leuten,
Men of understanding, it says here.
so Männer des Verständnisses.
Okay, now let's read this quote
So, jetzt diesen ersten Zitat in den Livestream
from
lesen.
Review and Herald.
Das ist von RH.
It says, once again Ezra addressed the Levites in Babylon with the words, who is on the Lord's side? So what did he say?
So, was hat er gesagt?
Who is on the Lord's side? Like Moses, right?
Genauso wie Mose. Wer ist auf dem Herrn Seite?
So he gives basically this last warning message to them.
So, er gibt hier diese letzte Warnungsbotschaft zu ihr.
And what is this warning message here?
Und was ist diese Warnungsbotschaft hier?
What should it accomplish?
So, was sollte es bewirken?
Yeah, come out of Babylon.
Dass
Right?
sie aus Babylon herauskommen.
Yeah. And we understand here, what does this White say, what angel comes down here at the 7th plague?
Und wie verstehen wir das? Was sagt Ellen White? Welcher Engel kommt hier zum Anfang der 7. Plage herab?
Revelation 18,
Offenbarung 18.
which is come out of Babylon, right?
Seine Botschaft ist, kommt aus Babylon heraus.
Okay, so this is basically come out of Babylon.
Kommt aus Babylon heraus.
And when can you only truly give this message?
Und wann ist der einzige Mal, wo du diesen Botschaft wahrlich geben kannst?
Yeah, when-
Auf Babylon.
When you're out of Babylon yourself, right?
Wenn du selbst aus Babylon heraus bist.
Okay, it doesn't make really sense to say come out of Babylon when you're still in Babylon, right?
Also das macht überhaupt keinen Sinn, aus Babylon herauszurufen, wenn du dich selbst da drin befindest.
Okay,
Although you've got that guy, is it in Jeremiah, for 3 years he calls them to come out to leave Jerusalem, but he gets destroyed in the.
yes.
And so there are people that in Babylon try to call out of Babylon.
Oh, he was in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, but it's the same
Yes, yes.
depiction. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, so he says, who is on the Lord's side? And then it says, to emphasize the importance of quick action, he chose 9 chief men and 2 men of understanding as special messengers to return and persuade their brethren to accompany them to Jerusalem. While the travelers tarried, these trusted messengers hastened back to Iddo the chief and his brethren the Nethinims with the plea, bring unto us ministers for the house of our God. This entreaty was heeded. A few halting souls made final decision to return. So a few one will come and make the final decision to stand with God's people.
So einige werden in diese Zeit kommen und diese Entscheidung treffen, doch mit Gottes Volk an der Seite zu stehen.
Ezra acknowledged with gratitude that by the good hand of our God, his messengers succeeded in returning to the camp quickly with about 40 priests and 220 Nethinims, men upon whom he could depend as wise ministers and good teachers and helpers. Okay, so how many people did he send out to gather these 40 priests?
So, wie viele hat er gesandt, um diesen 40 Priestern herauszurufen? 9 and 2.
9 and 2, which are?
9 und 2, was 11
It's
ist.
11, right? Okay, now go to verse 24.
So, geht jetzt zu Vers 24.
This is now when these 40 priests came back and they now started their journey.
So, das ist, wenn diese 40 Priester zurückkamen und ihre Heimreise anfängt.
It says, then I separated 12 of the chief of the priests, Sherebiah, Hashbiah, and 10 of their brethren with them. So how many are now?
So, wie viel gibt es jetzt?
12.
12.
So therefore, what is being made up here?
So,
Number.
was
Yes.
ist hier vollständig gemacht worden? Also die Nummer.
Yes, amen. So number being made up.
So, der Nummer ist vervollständigt worden.
Okay, so therefore, those people that get this last invitation, they are the ones that will make up the number. Okay.
So, diese letzte Einladung bekommen, sind diejenigen, die die Nummer vervollständigen werden.
So, because this whole line here,
Diese gesamte Linie,
about whom is it speaking?
so über wem spricht es?
Yeah, our camp, right?
Unsere Lage.
Okay, so this Omega apostasy will be in our camp.
So, dieser Omega-Abfall wird sich in unserer Lage stattfinden.
Our camp meaning all those that since 2016 were on the right side of the issue. Right?
Und unsere Lage, das heißt all diejenigen, die seit 2016 auf der richtigen Seite der Sache stehen.
Okay, so unfortunately many will partake in this. Okay,
Und leider viele werden in dieser Omega teilnehmen.
but all of us who stand faithfully in this final test,
Aber all diejenigen von uns, die in diesem finalen Test treu bis hierhin bestehen,
they will already receive God's blessings here,
sie werden bereits hier die Segnungen des Herrn erhalten.
and the Lord will use them to give those that partook in the Omega apostasy this last call.
Und der Herr wird diejenigen denn benutzen, um diese letzte Warnung diejenigen zu geben, die in diesen Abfall, diesen Omega-Abfall teilgenommen haben.
And those that will then come out under this last warning, they will join with those that gave the last call. Right?
Und diejenigen, die dieser letzte Aufruf hören und horchen und kommen und mit sie stehen, sie werden dann kommen und mit sie stehen.
Yes, and they will basically make up the number.
Und
Okay.
die sind diejenigen, die die Nummer vollständig machen werden.
Okay, everybody follows?
Kann jeder folgen?
Okay, good. So now let's go to Genesis 18.
So, lasst uns jetzt zu 1. Buch Mose, Kapitel 18 gehen.
This now speaks about the story of Abraham
Spricht über die Geschichte von Abraham,
when Christ came to him.
als Christus zu ihm kam.
Okay, so let's begin in verse 1
Und wir beginnen in Vers 1
and let's read down to verse 4.
und wir lesen bis Vers 4 hinab.
It says, And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground. And said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Okay, so what can we see here?
So, was können wir hier sehen? It
Was the heat of the day,
so, es war der Hitze des Tages,
which is midnight,
was Mitternacht ist.
or midday or midnight.
Mittag, gleich Mitternacht.
Okay. And then you have the foot washing illustrated here.
Und dann gibt es die Fußwaschung hier dargestellt.
And what is he doing in verse 3?
Und was tut er in Vers 3?
Yes, he basically invites him, right?
So, er lädt Gott ein.
So he says, don't pass by me, but come.
Geh nicht an mich vorüber, sondern bleibe, komm hinein.
Yes, Luke 24.
Das
Right?
Lukas 24 ist das.
Okay, so I just noticed some points I didn't really consider yet, but
Ich habe einige Punkte eben gesehen, die ich bis jetzt nicht in Betracht gezogen habe.
because where do we mark the foot washing?
Denn wo markieren wir das Fußwaschung?
Just prior to this point.
Also gerade vor diesem Punkt.
Here, right?
So hier drinne.
But this is, I don't know that that's the same point, because Christ says, what I'm doing for you,
Ja.
you're to do
Yes.
likewise. And he's illustrating somebody that now does it.
Yes.
So when you come to this point, you wash your brother's feet.
Also als Christus die Jünger Füße gewaschen hat, der hat gesagt, was ich für euch tue, das ist, was ihr tun sollt. Und so hier an diesem Punkt, Abraham stellt jemanden dar, der diesen Werk jetzt denn tut von diesem Punkt an.
Abraham represents somebody like Christ who washes others' feet.
So, Abraham in diesem Fall stellt jemand wie Christus, der jemand anderem den Füßen wäscht.
Yes, because I also just saw here he fell down on his face, right, when he saw him.
Weil ich habe auch hier gesehen, dass er auf sein Angesicht fiel, als er ihn sah.
Okay, so therefore Abraham is standing here,
So,
right?
deswegen Abraham, der steht hier.
And what's the Lord now doing? Let's jump down to verse 17.
Und was tut der Herr? Lasst uns bis Vers 17 hinunterspringen.
It says, And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? So what is the Lord about to do now to him?
So, was steht der Herr kurz to do to Abraham oder to do?
To Abraham, yes.
Also was tut der Herr mit Abraham hier?
Reveal something to him.
Yes, he now reveals him.
Er offenbart ihm was.
Okay, and what is he going to reveal to him?
Und was wird er ihm offenbaren? Destruction of the cities.
Yeah, destruction of the cities, right?
Zerstörung der Städte.
Because when you stand here, what should you give?
Denn wenn du hier stehst, was solltest du geben?
Yes, the last warning or the prediction, right?
Also der letzte Warnung oder die Vorhersage.
Because this is now the seventh plague, and the seventh plague is also in connection with the prediction.
Also dies ist der 7. Plage und der 7. Plage ist was im
Revelation
Zusammenhang
18.
mit der Vorhersage?
I don't know what your
Okay.
questions were.
The 10,
Das ist der 10.
10 days before.
10
right?
Tage zuvor.
Okay, yes,
Okay,
more spirit prediction.
yes, Peter.
Just have a question.
Mhm.
How do you understand verse 14?
Also eine
14.
Frage, wie verstehst du Vers 14?
Because it's saying that he stands at that point, you know, and he also so, and in verse 14 it says that at the time appointed he shall receive the child.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, it must be. I also thought about that. But Abraham here is interceding. You know, it's representing the work that somebody that's overcome does.
Also daran habe ich auch gedacht. Aber Abraham hier, der tut Fürbitte und das stellt die Werk dar von jemand, der überwunden hat.
just asking because at that point you already have the promise, right? When you come to that point, the promise is fulfilled. So he says, he just tells him, you know, at the time appointed I will come back and then the promise will be fulfilled.
Yes, I mean that's definitely a good question, but maybe that's just something we don't really understand yet, in the sense that I don't know. What about here?
So was ist mit hier?
Not two different illustrations
Do you,
in one passage.
So,
I
zwei
mean, the
verschiedene
promise is
Darstellungen
given to
derselben.
Abraham, right? So Abraham is the one who receives the seed. So that's just what I'm asking.
Die
So,
Verheißung wird Abraham gegeben. Abraham ist derjenige, der Same erhält.
yes,
So-
but what does it mean to receive children?
So, was bedeutet es, Kinder zu erhalten?
I mean, in this case, the seed, right? You shall have a son, the son.
I mean,
But this is my Also, this is my beloved son is fulfilled at the end.
Yes.
Right?
So, mein geliebter Sohn ist da am Ende erfüllt.
Yeah, but my question is, for Abraham, it's fulfilled at that point already, right? For the first group, so that's where the promise for them is fulfilled. This is their time appointed.
Yeah, but if you can't take this and mix it in with that. So
I mean, that's.
I mean,
question,
I
because
get
we
your
base
point.
that
Okay.
all upon the point that he's interceding.
Yes.
So
I mean, I get your point, but you also need to consider the context. So
Also Sarah ist Mocken. So, where
the
die,
point is, right, that you know, he basically gets visited by these two anointed ones, right? All three people, right, which Christ and the two anointed, and he receives a promise about the child that he will receive. And then it comes to a point where he receives a revelation about what God is about to do. And then he begins to intercede for Lot.
Because at where so you received the seed?
Right there, that's what we
Yeah,
Well,
always
you
mark
can't
as.
take that in this context,
That's the problem.
Why not?
because it's, you know, you've got to bring line upon line together for a start off. That has to be, the Bible has to tell you where that's fulfilled.
Yes, I mean, there's a foot washing right before the
Yeah,
cross.
we're not denying that, but not according to this. You can't take this story here and say at the time appointed, and the very next line says the time appointed.
Now, the point that I'm making, right, is right, there were, Lawrence has written FT, right,
Yes.
that at this point, before the sacrifice is brought, there's a foot washing taking place, whatever
But
that means.
not this foot washing. He's washing the feet of Christ.
I mean, that's
And
always,
he's also humbled in the dust.
that was always the problem, right? He was washing Christ's feet, so.
I mean, Mary also washes Christ's feet, right?
Yes, and it says it's the cross.
Yeah.
And she,
No, right, when she opens the
when she
alabaster
busts
box.
open the alabaster box, it's the message going forward, so it's actually at the beginning of the seventh plague. She's washing his feet. She represents somebody that's humbled in the dust right there. So,
I just say that, you know.
I mean, I
the
get
point- the
your
time appointed,
point,
you
you
know,
know,
that's
but,
where Abram receives the seed.
yes,
So I think that is,
but I
for
think
me, a strong proof that, you know, that
there might be some different illustration of this
yes, but
seed also.
the time appointed
To
is the
look at
harvest, right?
which is the seventh plague.
Yes, well, that's what we're talking about. That there's a beginning point where there's a group resurrected, and there's an end point where there's a group resurrected. So we've got to also take that into account.
Because also it says, right, the seed will be as the stars of, or the sand of the sea, right? Which would be this year at the end, right? So in this sense, there might be something that we haven't really considered yet. Okay, doesn't matter, we can look at this particular point later, but I think we can all agree that verse 17 marks this point here of the seventh plague, right?
Wir können diesen Punkt später näher anschauen, aber was wir alle in Übereinstimmung sein können, ist, dass diesen Punkt markiert, also Vers 17, der Anfang der 7. Plage.
Because that's now the revelation given to Abraham
Und das ist die Offenbarung, die Abraham gegeben wird,
about the punishment on the cities.
über die Bestrafung an den Städten.
Okay, so let's continue then.
So, lasst uns dann fortsetzen.
Let's jump down to verse. Let's just continue, verse 18.
Vers 18.
Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. So that might be an answer to it because it's pointing forward, right?
Das mag vielleicht eine
speaking about
Antwort
this
darauf hin,
See it
weil
again.
das weist auf die
Verse
Zukunft hin.
18.
Vers 18.
It says, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. That's referring to his seed, right?
Das ist
Okay.
Bezug auf seinen Samen.
So, and here points it still to a future point, right?
Das weist auf einen zukünftigen Punkt hin.
So, verse 19.
Vers 19.
For I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So also still future. But we can see that once you have this experience, what will you do?
Also du kannst sehen, dass wenn du diese Erfahrung gehabt hast, was wirst du tun?
Keep judgment.
You will command your children after.
Du
You-
wirst deine Kinder nach dir befehlen.
So all those converts, you will instruct them now in the way of righteousness.
All diese Bekehrten, du wirst sie in den Weg der Gerechtigkeit unterweisen.
And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now to see whether they have done altogether according to this cry of it, which has come unto me, and if not, I will know. And then we understand Abraham started interceding,
Und dann wir verstehen, dass Abraham fängt an, Fürbittedienst zu tun.
which is basically here now he intercedes for those that are still in Sodom.
Und er tut Fürbitte für diejenigen, die noch in Sodom sind.
Yeah,
So-
it's sort of parallel to the next chapter. The two angels come to Sodom at the same time he's interceding.
Yes.
Das ist parallel zu der nächsten Kapitel, Kapitel 19. Die zwei Engel zu Sodom kommen, während Abraham noch Fürbitte tut.
Intercession for Sodom and also intercession for the three friends, right?
Fürbitte für Sodom und auch für die 3 Freunde Hiobs.
So now jump down to Genesis 19.
So, jetzt gehen wir zu 1. Buch Mose 19.
It says, "And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot seeing them rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground." So now, at the time when Abraham intercedes, now these 2 angels come to Sodom.
So,
Right?
zur Zeit, wo Abraham Fürbittedienst leistet, kommt diesen 2 Engeln zu Sodom.
And who are these 2 angels?
Und wer sind diese 2 Engel?
2 anointed ones, yes.
So die 2 Gesalbten.
So here, the 2 anointed ones, right?
So hier kommt die 2 Gesalbten.
And who would they be?
Und wer werden die sein?
Those anointed there.
Yes.
Also diejenigen, die gesandt werden oder eben gesalbt werden.
Would be the same that do intercession here, right?
Das wären dieselben, die hier Fürbitte tun.
Okay, 2 ones. Those that are sent.
Diejenigen, die gesandt sind.
Okay. And Lot seeing them rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground.
Vers 2.
And he said, "Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat." Okay, so here we would have a problem, right? Because Lot, he's now also washing their feet, right?
So, hier haben wir ein Problem, weil Lot, der wäscht auch.
But he
Ihre Füße.
didn't have the experience.
Aber er hat diese Erfahrung noch nicht.
Because
Wash your feet.
Hmm?
It says wash your feet. It doesn't say that.
Well, he's receiving the angels, so he's representing somebody who's bowed down before him. So when the message comes to him, he humbles himself. He's now
Accepting the message.
accepting the message, right? So it's all it's representing. He's receiving the message. His character has been changed,
Yes.
and now he's going to be sent to give them.
yeah, but as I understand, and maybe my understanding is faulty, but as I understand that when now the wicked men come,
Also wenn die bösen Männer kommen,
that's basically his test where he now confesses Christ.
das ist ein Test, wo er Christus bekennt.
And when the second door is shut, then he's sent, right?
Und wenn der zweite Tor zugemacht wird, dann wird er gesandt.
Okay, so basically all these verses leading down to this second door shut, this is his final test.
So, all diesen
Und dann
Versen, die führen bis zu
sent.
diesem zweiten Tür, der geschlossen wird, ist seine finalen Test und dann wird er gesandt werden.
Yes,
Sister Lucia made a point
it's just
there.
a test within
One
the
thing.
test.
Yes. So basically, the final test for the first group is here,
So,
right?
der finale Test für die erste Gruppe ist hierin.
And then immediately the final test for
Yes.
those start, right?
Und dann sofort danach der finale Test für die anderen beginnt.
Okay, so just for the lack of better illustration, I'll just make final test 2. Yes.
So. Nur durch den Mangel an ein besseres Verständnis, finalen Test 1 und 2.
Okay, so and basically this is now the time where Job is tested. Lot is tested.
So, dies ist der Zeit, wo Lot getestet wird.
Okay, Lot tested. And
Before the end.
here he has his 7th plague. Okay,
Hier am Ende hat Lot seine 7. Plage.
In the middle.
which is Lot sent.
Und Lot wird da gesandt.
Okay, everybody understands?
Kann jeder das verstehen?
It's just a repeating.
It's like this pattern is just in a smaller version here.
So, diese gesamte hier ist nur hier in eine kleinere Version.
And whom does he warn?
Und wem warnt er?
Sons-in-law.
Yes, his children, right?
Seine Kinder.
So he gives now a final warning.
So,
Okay.
er gibt in dieser Zeit eine finale Warnung.
But he also says to the Sodomites, do not so wicked. It is not the last one.
Wenn er sagt zu den Sodomitern, tu nicht so böse, ist das nicht der finale Warnung?
I mean, it would be this warning. I mean, here you also give some kind of testimony, right?
So, hier
Ein
gibst
Rebuke.
du eine Art Zeugnis.
You will speak to the Omega apostasy, right? You will rebuke them.
So, du wirst zu den Omega-Abfall hier sie tadeln. So Lot would be rebuking them here. Then.
Yes.
Also so Lot werde denn, das ist sein 1 bis 6 hier, werde sie hier
Yes.
tadeln.
Okay, so, but he is Lot sent after the door is shut, and then he gives the last warning to his family members.
Aber hier ist der Lot gesandt, nachdem der zweite Tür zugemacht worden ist, und er ist gesandt zu seinen Familienmitgliedern.
Okay, because when we just go back to Genesis 19,
Dann werden wir zurück zu 1. Buch Mose 19 gehen.
let's begin in verse 4.
In Vers 4.
But before they lay down, the man of the city, even the man of Sodom, compassed the house around, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. And Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him. And so here's the first shut door, right?
So, hier ist die erste geschlossene Tür.
And said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. So, what is he basically doing here?
So, was tut er hier? He's passing the test. He's not delivering up his brother.
Yes, I mean, he's passing the test, right?
Er besteht den Test.
He's willing to give up all those things that are dear to him.
So, er ist bereit, alles aufzugeben, was ihm ganz nahe steht.
The message is more important than his family,
Die
Yes.
Botschaft
earthly
ist,
belongings, his own life.
die Botschaft ist wichtiger als seine Familie, seine irdische Hab und Gut und sogar sein eigenes Leben.
Because afterwards they want to get at him, right?
Nachher wollen sie ihn umbringen.
Okay, but also
Aber auch,
he says they are under the shadow of my roof.
er sagt, sie stehen unter den Schatten meines Daches.
So what illustration comes into your mind? Yeah.
Welche Darstellung kommt da? Also, darin,
The refuge.
Yeah, the refuge city, right?
also die Zufluchtsstadt.
So basically these people, they are this avenger of blood standing before the gate.
Also diese Volk hier, diese Mob hier, die sind der Bluträcher, der vor der Tor steht.
But he is not delivering them out to it.
Aber
the
er
hands, okay.
liefert seine Geschwister in deren Händen nicht.
So it's like, because I thought of, it's like where Jesus says, I in you and thou in me, right?
So, wo Christus sagt, ich in euch und ihr in mir.
So and somehow you need to go into the refuge city,
So, auf gewisse Weise, du musst in der Zufluchtsstadt gehen,
but also Christ somehow is in you as a refuge. You are a refuge city for Christ somehow.
aber auch du bist auch der, in dem Sinne, ja, Gehäuse oder Zuflucht für Christus.
In the sense that you will not deliver him up or not.
In dem Sinne, dass du
Betray,
ihm
right?
nichts verraten wirst, sondern ausliefern wirst.
Okay.
Amen?
So, alright. Yes, and let's just read verse 9 to
Yes.
11.
Vers 9 bis 11.
And they said, Stand back, and they said again, This one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. But the man put forth a hand and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut to the door. So that's the second shut door.
So, hier ist der zweite geschlossene Tür, Vers 10.
So, and this would be the shut door here.
Und das wäre dann diese geschlossene Tür hier.
And the first one would be
Und die erste geschlossene Tür an diese Wegmarke.
okay. And verse 11.
Vers 11.
And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. So what happened with them?
So, was geschah mit ihnen?
Eternally blind.
Yes, they're now
Für
fully blind. right?
immer blind.
So let's go to the next quote.
So, jetzt in den Livestream zu dem nächsten Zitat.
And let's just read the beginning with bold-faced.
Und wir lesen nur das erste Teil mit den Fettgedruckten.
No, we begin with bold-faced and read just the rest of it.
Also wir fangen, wo das Fettgedruckten ist an. Yes.
Yes, okay. No, because you said only the first part of the bold-faced. That's what you said.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, so it says, they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. Had they not been visited with double blindness, being given up to hardness of heart, the stroke of God upon them would have caused them to fear and to desist from their evil work. So what kind of blindness did they receive?
So, was für eine Blindheit haben sie erhalten?
Double blindness, right?
Doppelt Blindheit.
Punishment in Babylon.
Yes.
Das ist die Bestrafung auf Babel.
So it's basically the opposite of the double blessing that you receive at the beginning of the seventh place, right?
Es ist das Gegenteil von der doppelte Segen, die du Anfang der 7. Plage bekommst.
Okay.
Actually, the Lord receives, Job receives double blessing.
Yes.
Und
Okay.
Hiob erhält auch den doppelten Segen an diesen Stellen.
Okay, and
It's like,
And
just, sorry to interrupt, just because you've got Elijah and Elisha, right?
So, es gibt Elia und Elisa.
And you've got, I wonder if those two doors are parallel to the two times they cross.
Und meine Gedanken ist, dass diese zwei Türen von Lot hier, ob das eine Parallel ist zu den zweimal, wo sie den Jordan schlagen und überqueren.
Because the first one is obviously at the beginning there, and the second one is the point where he gets double.
Mhm.
Right? It's
Der
showing
erste
you-
ist hier am Anfang, der zweite ist der Punkt, wo er doppelt erhält.
So now you've got the same test repeating. In this one, you've got, it comes out the door, and then the second door, this is double blindness map, showing you the exact same.
It's the
Also
same pattern.
dasselbe wieder hierin halt zum der ersten Tür und dann hier der doppelte Schlag, Blindschlag an der zweiten Tür. Ist derselbe Muster eben wie hier und hier.
Yes. Okay. So, and what does she say here? So they received double blindness in being given up to hardness of heart.
So, was
right?
sagt sie hier? Sie erhalten doppelt Blindheit und sie werden die Härte ihres Herzens übergeben werden.
It's like, what's his name,
Yes.
Nabal, his
Yeah.
heart becomes stone.
Das ist wie in der Geschichte von Nabal, wo sein Herz wie Stein wird. 10
Na-
days later.
10. Yes. So this would be this 10 here, right?
Das wäre denn diese 10 hier.
Where, I mean, the story of Nabal, I don't want to put it here now.
Also ich möchte jetzt die Geschichte von Nabal hier nicht drauflegen.
Because if we understand it correctly, then the 10 days of Nabal is this 10.
Denn wenn wir das korrekterweise verstehen, dann die 10 Tage von Nabal ist eben dieses 10.
But it's just the same principle.
Aber
right?
es ist eben denselben Prinzip hier,
Just the same pattern.
derselbe Muster, nur auf klein.
Okay. And 10 days later he was smitten.
10 Tage danach ist er erschlagen worden.
Okay, and it goes on to say here,
Es sagt weiter,
that last, just after the,
ach, wir sind, also wir sind immer noch in den Zitat nach dem Fettgedruck, der ersten Fettgedruck.
that last night was marked by no greater sins than many others before it, but mercy, so long slighted, had at last ceased its pleading. The inhabitants of Sodom had passed the limits of divine forbearance, the hidden boundary between God's patience and his wrath. The fires of his vengeance were about to be kindled in the vale of Sidon. Okay, so therefore, what happened here?
So, was geschah denn hier, demgemäß?
Yes, it is done, right?
So,
Because
es ist getan.
the seventh plague for them here,
So, für diese Gruppe ist der 7. Plage hier.
and it is also
Es ist getan
done for them,
für
right?
sie.
So because it's the last call for all those in this camp, and afterwards nobody gets out anymore.
Es ist der letzte Aufruf für all diejenigen in diesem Lager und danach kommt keiner mehr heraus aus Sodom oder Jerusalem
Yes.
oder Babylon.
Because we saw nobody heeded Lot's warning.
Und
Right?
wir haben gesehen, dass keiner haben den Warnungen von Lot gehorcht.
Okay, and then at the end we understand fire comes down.
Und dann am Ende, wir verstehen die Geschichte, kommt das Feuer herab. Sodom wird zerstört.
Okay, so could everybody follow along?
So konnte jeder mitfolgen.
Okay. So basically, we can therefore see that Abraham, we can all agree that once he received the revelation, he's standing here, he's now interceding in this time here.
So, wir können alle zustimmen, Abraham, wenn er diese Offenbarung an dieser Stelle erhält, dann tut er in dieser Zeitperiode hier Fürbittedienst.
And at the same time, these two anointed ones come to Sodom.
Und zur selben Zeit, diese zwei Gesalbten kommen zur Sodom, which would be Abraham.
Which would be Abraham.
Das wäre dann prophetisch gesehen Abraham auch.
So same people, just two different symbols for the same people.
So, dieselben Volk, nur zwei verschiedene Symbolen für denselben Volk.
And they basically give the last warning to Lot.
Und sie geben der letzte Warnungsbotschaft zur Lot in dieser Zeit.
Just like, for instance, Ezra gave the last warning, or Moses gave the last warning, or where's the book? Job.
Genauso wie Ezra, Hiob und Abraham die letzte Mose, die letzte Warnung gab.
So basically, the last warning is who's on the Lord's side. Right?
Und die letzte Warnung ist eben, wer ist auf dem Herrn Seite.
And Lot, he manifested that he's faithful.
Und Lot, der hat hier seine Treue manifest gemacht.
And he manifested that he was not willing to give up Christ, not to deliver him out, but to rather forsake his earthly possessions than to give him up.
Und er hat bewiesen hier, dass er nicht bereit war, Christus oder seine Geschwister auszuliefern, sondern er war eher bereit, all seine irdische Habe und Gut und was ihm nahe war, stattdessen aufzugeben.
Even his own life.
Sogar sein eigenes Leben.
And therefore he now comes here and he's now accounted worthy and he's sent.
So, er kommt zu diesem Punkt an und der wird als würdig anerkannt und wird gesandt.
Just like those that pass this test and are counted worthy are sent.
Genauso wie diejenigen, die dieses Test besteht und wird als würdig hier befunden, die auch gesandt werden.
Okay. So, but we saw that when Lot is sent, nobody comes out anymore. Okay.
Aber wir haben gesehen, als Lot gesandt wird, dass da kommt keiner mehr heraus.
Actually not true, right?
Das ist wohl nicht wahr.
Because his wife and daughters went with him.
But
Also seine Frauen und Tochter gingen mit ihm.
I would say they're part of those. Okay.
Ich würde vorschlagen, dass Lot und seine Frauen sind ein Teil von dieser Gruppe hier.
Meaning his wife never really went out, let's say this way, but
Also die Frau ging nicht wirklich hinaus, aber
Because he was sent basically to his other children, right?
er ist gesandt zu diesen anderen Kindern.
Okay. And yes, and we saw that those that receive this last warning here,
Und wir haben gesehen, diejenigen, die diese letzte Warnung hier erhalten haben,
like Lot,
wie Lot,
that accept this last warning, they will be the one that make up the number.
diese letzte Warnung angenommen haben, die werden diejenigen in dieser Zeit, die die Nummer vollständig machen.
Okay. And once this is basically finished here, this final warning, this fractal,
Gut.
then the fire will come down and Sodom will be destroyed.
So, wenn diese Werk hier, in diese finale Warnung in dieser Zeit vollendet ist, dann wird das Feuer herabkommen und Sodom wird zerstört.
Amen?
Amen.
Everybody follows?
Kann jeder folgen?
Praise God. Then I would say, if there are no further questions or thoughts,
Also wenn es keine weiteren Fragen oder Gedanken gibt,
then let's close with our prayer.
dann lasst uns mit unserer Gebetsrunde Schluss machen.